Welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll talk about the role of breath work in heavy lifting and powerlifting. So if you're interested in that, definitely stick around. It's an important concept, of course, right? You know, something that we talk about all the time is if you want to build muscle. In the video that we talk about building muscle, go ahead and take a look. We talk about something called progressive overload. You need to overload your muscle so that way your muscle has a reason for it to tear, for it to rebuild, stronger, bigger, faster, etc., right? So in this video, we'll touch about breath work and how it ties into heavy lifting and powerlifting, because your breath is super important in how you think about lifting, because every single repetition that you do requires you to inhale, exhale, etc. So before we get started though, we always want to set the baseline understanding of what we're talking about. We always want to talk in the context of alpha, right? What is your alpha state? What is your alpha health? You know, every single one of us has a specific genetic potential. Are we optimizing it to its potential? More than likely no, right? We just go ahead and live the sedentary lifestyle that we normally live, which is why we focus on your movement, your metabolism, and your mindset. How are you thinking about moving, right? Are you breathing right? Are you going ahead and moving your body, your joints and whatnot, so that you have enough blood flow going through your system? And then on top of that, we talk about your metabolism, right? What are you feeding yourself? What are you putting inside your body? And at the same time, what are you doing to not eat? Are you fasting? Are you depriving your body of food? Because it's important to not give your body food all the time. There's a certain reason why we store energy, right? For in instances where there is no food, we need to go ahead and store it at fat. But when we do use it, we need to know how to use it properly. And many of us don't. We live in a lifestyle of everything of abundance, right? We can go to the store right now, a 7-Eleven. I don't know where you are, but in New York and California, in all of US, there's a lot of 7-Elevens. You can literally go to the store. And if you were to go ahead and look at every single item that you can buy to eat, I can guarantee you roughly 70% of it is going to be carbohydrates. Everything about it is just carbs. And so if you were to eat fat on top of that, we demonize fat, but if you think about it, all that carb gets converted to fat, and that fat that you have, what is it? There's no purpose for it. So guess what? It gets stored as fat as well. So you have a compounding effect in what you put inside your body. So it's super important that you understand the metabolism aspect of it. You can go ahead and take a look at the other videos about metabolism where we really dive deep, really down the rabbit hole. Very fun and fascinating. And then of course, lastly, we have mindset. What are you thinking about? What does your circadian rhythm look like when you, from your moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep? What does your rise ritual look like? What does your rest ritual look like? And it's always this cycle that happens throughout your days. And so when you understand that, and we leverage some neuroscience concepts of your RAS, your reticular activating system, the part of your brain, there's a certain bundle of neurons that really focus on selective focus, right? What are you thinking about? What are you selectively focusing on? And that eventually leads to certain actions, right? Your thought, what are you selectively focusing on? And that thought eventually leads to certain actions, whether you move a certain way or move a certain another way, you're doing an action, and that action over time becomes a behavior that you do. You know, as we're growing up, there's a lot of behaviors that my mom told me not to do, and I do the same thing with my children. And so it's just like this constant process of making sure that certain behaviors are promoted, certain behaviors are not promoted, because obviously we don't want behaviors that are negative to our life. I mean, granted, sometimes it does happen, but there's always room for improvement. So we talk about that, and then of course, you know, as I talk about the habit stack, you realize that at the end of it, you know, you go from a thought to an action to a behavior, and then eventually to a habit, and that habit leads to a personality, and that personality leads to your lifestyle. And so that habit aspect is really your default mode. What is your default mode? What is your, if you, no one was around you and you did it by yourself, if you were by yourself, what would you do by default, right? There's certain actions that you take, certain behaviors, certain habits that you have that are just defaulted. And so the default mode network is really there for to conserve energy. We're always trying to conserve energy. Our body's always trying to save energy. And so as a result of that, you're gonna use the least amount of energy to do certain tasks. And that's where the default mode comes in. So we leverage our RAS, or reticular activating system, and then we go ahead and recondition our default mode to make a new default mode that serves you versus not serve you, right? Of course. So that's what we talk about alpha. And I spent how many minutes? Maybe 4 minutes talking about this. This just tells you that how much more there is to know. But I always like to start off this way just so that I can give you a primer. If you already know it, great. Just a nice little refresher. Remember, the more we hear about it, the more easier it becomes to actually understand it. And so with that being said, let's talk about and dive deep into the topic at hand. How do we talk about the breath? How do we breathe properly? So that way when we're in the gym and we want to build muscle, we do progressive overload, so we can go ahead and do heavy lifting and any exercises like powerlifting as well. Powerlifting, heavy lifting, they're all the same thing. They just mean that you lift very heavy weights, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's really the key aspect of it. So what I want you to think about is exactly how do you do that breathing? And so the first step I want to talk about is, let's talk about that normal breath. What does that look like to you, right? So, I want to breathe with you. Let's go ahead and just take a nice deep breath. So let's go ahead and I'm going to exaggerate. So inhale. And then just let it go, exhale. Right? So if you did do that deep breath, you more than likely were breathing from the top of your lungs. What that means is it's a pretty shallow breath. Your lungs are these massive, I want you to imagine this. There's a reason why I hang out here every single day doing the breathwork video, because I want to give you a glimpse of what your lungs actually look like. Many of you have seen it. It looks like an upside down, this big, globule of things, a big sac, right, where air goes in. But what I really want you to understand is when you take away that sac, that air sac, your lungs actually have something called alveoli, these big balloons that actually take in the oxygen, take in the environmental air, puts it in there, and then it allows it to transfuse into your blood, and then eventually you get the energy that you're looking for. So that tree behind me, right? I want you to imagine upside down. Imagine that top, the trunk, to be your trachea, to be your windpipe. And so it takes in the oxygen, and then you have all those branches and all those leaves, and those leaves are actually the alveoli within your system. And that's the amazing part about it. That's what I love about the breath. If I were to love any organ, I love all the organs equally. That was a very diplomatic answer, but the lungs, without the lungs, I can also make a case for the heart as well. Without the heart, I can also make a case for the okay. Instead of me feeling bad about me choosing the lungs, they're all great, but the lungs specifically, it's allowing you to take the oxygen from the environment, put it inside your body, and convert that into ATP. Every one of our cells does two types of energy production. There's aerobic production and there's anaerobic production. We take the oxygen from the environment, the cells then go ahead and puts it into the ATP through mitochondria, makes all that energy, then you get all that energy. We also do anaerobic. Think about all the carbs that you eat. Think about all the sugars that you eat. It needs to be converted into ATP, and a lot of cells do that when there's not enough oxygen present, which is why we think about food as our number one way of getting energy, but there are other ways to get energy. We just are not trained properly and we don't think too deep about it. So when we did that breath, we did a very shallow breath. What that means is, if your lung capacity, if you look at that tree, if I were to fill that full tree up with oxygen, that's like 100%. But when you're only doing from the top of that, the bottom base of the tree, you're only getting maybe 30% of the oxygen you technically could be getting. And so when you're not optimizing for the breath, what you end up having is feeling tired and, feeling the need to go ahead and drink caffeine, to take some supplements, to take energy drinks, etc., etc. So what I want to do, I want to invite you to do a few breaths with me, diaphragmatic breathing specifically, where we go ahead and breathe from our belly, and you'll see the impact it has when you actually go ahead and finish that exercise. So go ahead and put your right hand on your heart, left hand on your belly, and we want to go ahead and expand the belly, rise the chest, expand the belly, rise the chest. I want to do two with you just so that you get the idea of how to do it. So what we want to do is go ahead, and I don't want to be too slanted, go ahead and inhale from the belly, so expand the belly, rise the chest, and then let it go. Again, inhale from the belly, rise the chest, and then let it go. We're gonna do 5 of these. After the 5th one, I wanna see how you feel, and then I'll get deeper into heavy lifting and powerlifting, etc., etc. So again, right hand on your heart, left hand on your belly. Let's go ahead and take a deep breath in from the belly, from the top, and then let it go. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. How do you feel? Right, you did 5 breaths, but the breath you did wasn't a normal breath, something that you probably did when you were a child. You know, when you see children, when you see athletes, they optimize their breath because they know what it means to thrive. You know, there's a concept in medicine called failure to thrive, and this is really for children that are having a hard time being able to sustain themselves in this physical world, right? They come from their mom's womb into this world, and if they don't have enough energy to actually thrive, you know, they demise. And so when I think of the idea of breath, I think of thriving. I think of the ability to, you know, imagine when you're underneath the water and you haven't had oxygen for a while, what do you do when you get out, right? You're like, you're trying to get as much air as possible. And that's really the fundamental. And so when we're doing the breath, I want you to think about this type of breath all the time, right? We did 5. I found that to be a magic number. Maybe 1 is for you, 3 is for you, 5 is for you, possibly 10. For me, the sweet spot is between 5 and 10 for any type of situation where I need to come back and be grounded in the center moment, in the moment, right? In the present moment. And that's a hard thing for me to be in because I'm always thinking about the future. I'm always in the future. I'm thinking about where I'm going. And so when I'm thinking about it, I'm not in the present. And when I'm not in the present, sometimes I lose touch with myself, my physical body, because my physical body is transporting me into the future. And sometimes I think about the past. Sometimes I think about all the mistakes I made, sometimes all the choices that I made. And then I think about that, I dwell on it. Some certain things make me depressed, right? I'm sure it's very common for you as well. And so we get lost in the past, we get lost in the future, and we're never in the present moment. And which is why I found this practice, which is why I'm sharing this practice with you, and why it's one of those core fundamentals, like a subatomic units for alpha, right? Movement, metabolism, mindset, breathwork and blood flow, subatomic units for movement. And this is my gift to you. You know, if you take anything away from this video, I want you to understand your breath is super powerful. It helps you be centered in the present moment. And so now let's talk about what does that mean in terms of powerlifting and heavy lifting. Specifically, if you're the type of individual coming into this video thinking, man, I am super scrawny, or man, I am super overweight and I want to get muscles like Shaq, you know, what do I got to do? And, you know, and then Shaq will tell you, hey, you got to do progressive overload. And then you go like, okay, great, I got to lift heavy. You go to the gym and you realize you can't lift heavy. You can't lift that 225. You can't lift the, you know, 50-pound dumbbells. And that's when you sort of, you know, your bubble gets bursted, right? You know, we pop your balloon and then you start thinking, re-questioning, do I have what it takes? And so what I want to tell you is you do. You all do. And there's a certain process, sequence you can follow to get to the results that you're looking for. You know, I feel like the sun is like in my face. I'm not sure. Hopefully this is better. But yeah, that was for a little bit. And so what we want to think about is before you do that exercise, it's so key. You've heard of form and function, right? Form is how you set yourself up. Function is exactly like the action that you're taking, the behavior that's being done. And so form for heavy lifting is super duper important. If you want to stay in the game, you're gonna have to get comfortable doing the same repetitive movement day in and day out, over and over and over and over. If this is something that sounds like, man, this is boring, then my friend, this is not for you. My friend, I urge you to get off this video, go watch another hedonistic video that might serve you. But this one is really for the individuals that want to get long-term gratification, right? Gradual gratification. And so when you practice the breath, I have so many videos on the breath. Please go ahead and take a look at those. Please go ahead and take a look at some other individuals that are also amazing at doing breath. But I just need you to learn what the fundamental breath is. From a physiological standpoint, how do we optimize our lungs to get the most amount of energy or oxygen from the environment so we can go ahead and leverage it for our own needs and whatnot. So with that being said, when you're on the bench, when you're on the machine and you're about to lift heavy, I want you to think about what heavy means. It's a very relative term that I want to use. Heavy is whatever is heavy to you, right? 10 pounds could be heavy to you. 20 pounds could be heavy to you. 30 pounds could be heavy to you. 100 pounds could be heavy to you. 200 pounds could be heavy to you. So relative. Don't get carried away by what other people consider heavy, it doesn't really matter. We're not doing this for an ego. If you are, I apologize, but there is a probable future where you will get injured, because when you do anything for your ego, it never serves you. So whatever heavy means, right? Let's just say hypothetically you're starting out fresh, you haven't done anything like this before, you're just going to the gym, you don't know what your potential is, you feel embarrassed, you don't have a gym partner, you don't have a personal trainer, so you're just sort of going with the flow. You're seeing other people, you're thinking, man, maybe I could do that, maybe I could do that. And so what I recommend is you go ahead with a beginner's mindset. Put the hat on of a beginner. If you were learning how to swim, if you were learning how to play basketball, if you're learning how to drive a car, you don't know, right? You don't know. You see your mom do it, you see your dad do it, you see your siblings or friends or whatever do it, but you haven't done it. So in the car analogy, you got to start the car. And what does our instructor teach you? If you're taking an instructor or anyone teaching you, go slow. Go very slow. There's no rush. There's no rush to anything. You know, we want to self-inflict rush because for some reason we got time to catch, right? Even though I don't have, like, look what I'm wearing. I don't wear screens. I mean, I'm wearing glasses. I guess that's a screen. But all the screens that I use is so intentional. Everything is black and white. But that's another story. If you're interested in that, definitely let me know, and we'll create some videos around that content. But really, the lifting, with a beginner's mindset, start off with 5 pounds. You know, see how that feels. Maybe it feels very heavy. You know, if you're doing dumbbell curls, maybe 5 pounds is too much. Maybe go lower. Maybe go 2.5 pounds, right? Maybe nothing, right? You start off with no weight, and you just go ahead and flex your elbows and your shoulders and whatever, so that way you get some blood flow going on. But what's going to happen is you're going to realize that very quickly certain weights are very easy. You know, 5 pounds might be super easy, where you're like, I'm not even feeling anything. And then you might do 10 pounds, like, okay, I'm not feeling anything yet. You go to 15 pounds. So the goal is start slowly, 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever your gym offers, right? I think that would be a really good way of thinking about it. And then when you find your heavy for that day, that's your max, optimal you're gonna get to. And so what I recommend is go down 50% and do a rep and do a set. 6 reps for 3 sets. You know, you're gonna go, if it's a bicep curl, do 6 reps for 3 sets, and then you're gonna move on. You're gonna go to the next weight range. If it feels too easy, then go ahead and move on to the next one. But 3 sets, and the 3rd set should be your maximum weight. Whatever that weight that you were lifting and you felt was very heavy, you wanna do that. And that's gonna be your PR. We're gonna make that your PR. And if you can't make that your PR, then let's go ahead, drop a weight, go down a weight. So that way we get your new PR. And what's gonna be beautiful is, if you're very new to this and haven't done this in a while, you're gonna feel sore and tired. And so as you keep doing this more and more, those muscles are gonna get stronger, because you're putting in the ATP by the breath. You're doing the proper breath work throughout the whole process. You're probably gonna, you know, hold your belly or whatever you're gonna do. Take big breaths in. I'm doing that right now. I'm stretching out my midriff because there's a lot of fascia that's tightening up my vertebra, and I wanna loosen it up so that way it doesn't feel so tight, and I can actually do proper breath as I talk to you. So understanding that, apply that, tell me how that feels, how that works, and then I can go ahead and adjust you in the sense of how you should be thinking about doing your breath for your heavy lifts. With that being said, guys, hopefully you found value in this video. If you did, go ahead and give me a like, let me know you liked the video. And then also at the same time, if you disliked it, let me know in the comments why you disliked it. And what I really value and cherish, to be honest, is to see you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know you found value from the video, and it inspires me to keep going, because I know I'm reaching out to the 50,000 of you that I'm assuming that's all over the world that really appeal to my way of teaching and describing things. Other than that, my name is Shaquille. I'm with Alpha, and we're here to optimize yourself to your genetic potential. So definitely stick around. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.